Hello. So I actually grew up with a background in art. I started drawing and painting when I was about 2 years old when my parents gave me my first art kit. I come from a family full of artists. My grandfather was an incredible painter. My aunt was a painter and she also drew. And I have a cousin who is a graphic designer and a freelance illustrator for Backpacker magazine, actually. Yeah. Anyway, so, yeah, I love art because being deaf and growing up surrounded by hearing people with no siblings, art was what I did to entertain myself, and it always gave me a sense of peace. So, fast forward to when I was getting ready to go to college and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, my mom, who has a background in science, thought that given my love of art and my interest in biology, that I might enjoy doing medical illustration because I had always been fascinated by my dad's dental history books with illustrations of teeth. And I also spent lots of time studying my mom's Grey's Anatomy textbook. And I loved all of that. So I found out that RIT had a major in medical illustration, and I was so excited. So I enrolled. And when I arrived, I met a third year student who was in that program who was also deaf and asked some questions about what their experience had been. And I was warned that I would have to go to the hospital there in Rochester every week, and I would have to sit with a cadaver and draw the inner workings of someone's body. And as a first year student, of course, I was already a little uncomfortable, and that was a little bit jarring for me. So I decided I needed a new major. So I found another foundations course called 3D design. And in that course, I realized I was fascinated by industrial design. So that became my new major. And I loved it, designing cars and that kind of thing. So I was the only deaf woman in that program. Everyone else was male. And it was challenging and tough. It was also fun. But at that time, there was tremendous competition in that world. So I thought that I would graduate with my BFA and continue on to grad school to get my MFA in graphic design, thinking it might be a little easier to get into that field. So while I was in the process of getting my BFA, however, I took a course in deaf education and just fell in love with it. So I used my visual background to teach deaf children, of course, and I did that for 15 years and I loved it. But art was always still calling to me. So when I moved here to Seattle, the job opportunities are a bit different, and I have had some more time to dive back into my art. So another part of my background is that I grew up in Maine, born and raised. And again, I was the only deaf person, and my parents were gone on business a lot, and we had 30 acres of land. And I used to go off into the woods to play, and I grew up in the woods hiking and camping and riding horses. And nature is just such a part of me. It's the way that I escape from whatever challenges are happening in my daily life. And so that painting is from my memory of going off into the woods and disconnecting from the world and getting regrounded with nature. And so I painted those trees because it's one of my memories from Maine is, oh, what do you call it? A copse of birch trees. And you would go in and you were just surrounded by trees everywhere and you would look up and it was just absolutely incredible. So I found a picture online and that's what I used. And I started with a canvas and I used acrylic paint. So first I drew what I wanted to do, and then I added the first layer of paint and then the second layer, and I added progressive layers of paint to give it dimension. And when I had what I thought was my finished product, I took a photo of it and realized I was not satisfied with it. So I tried again, and I added even more layers of paint. And again, I wasn't satisfied. And the third time that I tried was finally the success. Um, it was when I really felt that I had achieved my vision. And it took me about 2 months to complete that painting because what I would do was paint for a bit and then I would leave it. And I would come back maybe a week later and I would see it with fresh eyes. And I would recognize things that I didn't care for and wanted to fix. And I think that the most important part of art is the process that you go through. And the more mistakes you make, the better, because your success comes from those mistakes.